Hello, welcome to the China Gallery at the Bowers Museum. My name is Ian Shi, and I am a junior ambassador at this museum. I'm currently attending Huntington Beach High School. The Bowers Museum is based off of Orange County, California, and has been recognized as one of the top 10 must-see museums in the United States. In the China Gallery that we have here, we house a permanent collection of Chinese artifacts represent each dynasty. We were honored to be selected by Bowers Museum as junior ambassadors to intern at the Shanghai Museum. During the internship, we focused on the world-famous bronze gallery, where we learned and presented about the history and the making of the different bronzeware. Today, I'd like to share this experience with you.
Today I'm going to be presenting this wine vessel from the late Shang Dynasty. This one is quite special because it was made for the maker's father in honor of his death. The name called Fu Yi Gong, as you can see, the name has 4 characters on it. The first one isn't pronounced because it's the family crest and it's engraved inside the vessel. Next, the word Fu, which means father, which means it's in honor of his father, and Yi, which is a part of the heavily stems. The heavily stems are indication of the order that were used in the ancient Chinese times. And Gong, which means wine vessel. Now moving on to the artifact itself, you can see from the head it is a ox-shaped head followed by the rabbit's ears, giraffe's horn, and a dragon coming down from its spine. At the same time, you can see that there are 2 large phoenix on each side and smaller ones. The phoenix represents grace and virtue. What is cool about this wine vessel is the way it opens up. So from the handle, you can see it is a ox head with this tongue open. And also there's also another tongue from the back. So when you push on the handle, the lid actually opens up. So you may ask why there are so many animals depicted on this wine vessel. So in the ancient times, many Chinese thought that having a lot of animals depicted on one wine vessel can have a lot of spiritual meanings. This is my artifact, and thank you for listening.
The artifact you have in front of you here is called a he, and it's a type of wine vessel. Its usage was actually not for drinking or even for heating wine. It was actually for the unique purpose of mixing wine. So at that time, it was actually very difficult for people to control the alcohol content of their wine. Let's say you had a wine that was not strong enough. You could mix it with a stronger wine in this vessel, or if you had something that was too strong, you could mix it with, say, water or something sweet to dilute it. What really attracted me to this artifact as I was walking through the bronze gallery in the museum was just how intricate and complex the imagery is on this vessel. And so if we actually examine it for a moment, we'll see there's actually 3 dragons which make up the vessel. We are first here in the spout, and then we have it at the back in the handle, and then we have a 3rd dragon which is actually on top of the lid. And if you look very closely, you'll see that the dragon on the lid is coiled and twisting, and its arms are positioned in such a way that make it look like it's about to jump up and fly into the sky. And if we actually look a little bit lower on the lid, we'll see around is something known as the Dragon Imagery, which is a very common type of imagery in Chinese bronzes. And so that reinforces the kind of dragon theme of the vessel. You might have noticed that on the lid and on the body, there's a little loop on each one. The purpose of this was actually very unique to the he vessel. Usually, there would be a chain that would connect these 2 loops, and that would hold the lid to the body of the vessel. However, we have lost that to history. We see on the body of the vessel what's known as an animal mask motif. If you look, you see what appears to be a nose on the edge of the vessel. On each side, you also see 2 bead-like eyes. This is a very common motif in Chinese bronzes, and we see an evolution of it over time. And so here we see that the nose and the eyes are more delicate and more thin compared to earlier versions. Relative to other artifacts in the gallery, the imagery on this vessel is a lot more complex and varied. This is actually very reflective of its time period. This vessel comes from the spring and autumn period, which is a very chaotic time in Chinese history. And so we see the artistic influence of the many ethnic minorities in China on the imagery of this vessel. This is the He vessel from the Bronze Gallery of the Shanghai Museum.
The artifact that I thoroughly studied and presented on in Shanghai is the Da Ding. The Da Ding is a 200 kilogram bronze casted ding or cooking pot that is immediately noticeable when you walk into the Chinese gallery. It is a guobao, or a national treasure, to the Shanghai Museum and to China as a whole. Casted in the 10th century BC Western Zhou dynasty, the most notable feature about the Da Ding are the engravings, both on the exterior and the interior. The intricate abstract patterns on the exterior likely depict rolling waves with boats, dragons on the handles, and an animal mask like tiger eyes on the base. The origins of the pot have been discovered through the 293 engraved character passage on the inside, which is split into two different stanzas. The left side of the passage talks about the origins of the pot and the owner, Ke. Ke was the imperial chef. And although being a chef doesn't sound like the most honorable role in the imperial court, it was likely one of the most important roles because he was the second-hand man to the emperor. Ke oversaw all the food preparation and the safety of the food given to the emperor. The left side of the passage also talks about the source of Ke's power. Ke's grandfather was an important minister in the imperial court. And when he passed away, the emperor decided to reward Ke for all of his grandfather's merits. The right side of the passage talks about the tangible rewards that were given to Ke, including a lot of farmland and the Da Ding. Very noticeably, on the right side of the passage, you can see a lot of the Chinese character Tian, or farmland. That was because farmland was very important to the ancient Chinese people, as farmland represented a symbol of power. The significance of the passage as a whole is that it sets into stone the political norms and the transition of power at the time. The Da Ding is actually one of a set of three called the Hainei Sanbao, or the three treasures of the ocean. The collection was discovered by Peng Ziying, a Qing dynasty aristocrat and collector in the early 20th century. However, as war broke out, the three individual dings were separated into different locations in China. The Da Ding remains in the Shanghai Museum, while one of his sisters is in Beijing and the other in the Gugong in Taipei. The Da Ding remains in the Shanghai Museum today, where it attracts thousands upon thousands of visitors every year. Thank you so much for listening in, and I hope you learned something about one of Shanghai Museum's most prized bronze wares.
I'm going to be talking about the set of bells, which is currently being displayed at the Shanghai Museum. These bells were previously owned by Marquis Su of Jin, who was the ruler of the Jin state during the Western Zhou dynasty. All of these bells are actually part of one set, but you may have noticed that two of the bells in the bottom row appear to be missing. These two bells are actually being displayed at a separate museum in China, the Shanxi Museum. So if you look closely at each bell, there is an inscription carved on the center of each one. Because these are all part of one set, these inscriptions can be read from left to right, the top row and then the bottom row. Together, these records tell the story of when Marquis Su, the bell's owner, followed the emperor to the countries bordering China to fight in wars in hopes of expanding their territory and gaining more wealth and power. These records tell the events that occurred at each battle and also the location and time each battle occurred at. Not only did they provide an insight into how the battles were fought during this time period, they are also very historically significant in another sense. A few hundred years after all of these events occurred, a Han Dynasty official wrote a very extensive and well-known record of ancient China called the Shiji, or Records of the Grand Historian. In it, he wrote that during this time period, this particular emperor died in his 30th year of reign. But from Su's accounts, we know that these wars didn't begin until the emperor's 33rd year of reign. Because of this, we know that the second-hand record written in the Shiji is inaccurate in regards to this time period. So as a result, these records are a very important historical supplement to our understanding of this era. This is also what makes it a national treasure, which means that these bells cannot be transported outside of China to be displayed at exhibits in other countries. Another interesting feature of these bells is their ability to play two different notes. So most bells that we have today can only play one note, but on the bottom of each bell there are two different carvings, one of a bird design and one of a wind design. So if you were to strike the bells at these two different positions, you would notice that they would produce two different notes. This allows the owner to play a huge variety of different notes with this entire set of bells. Another thing I found very fascinating was that these bells are actually still functional today, which means that they can still be played. And if you were to play them, you would notice that the sound they produce is very clear and doesn't really have an echo. This is due to the numerous small knobs on the surface of each bell. These knobs act as sound dampeners, which reduce the echo of each bell and allows them to produce a very clear chime that is very pleasing to the ear. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope that you learned something new about the incredible history and detail of this artifact.
Today I'm going to be presenting something known as the transparent mirror. Now this mirror goes by many names. It goes by the miracle mirror, the magical mirror, but the more logical approach to it is the transparent mirror. Now you're wondering, why does it have these titles? What makes it so different compared to our regular mirrors here at Bowers or any of the other mirrors in the Shanghai Museum? Now this mirror specifically is known as the transparent mirror because if provided with a beam of light, it will show the backside of the mirror onto a panel. Now, to properly explain this is that the mirror itself is set at a 45-degree angle, with the backside facing the top and the front side facing the bottom, directed towards the floor. Now, underneath that mirror is a small hole or an opening that has another mirror in it, which is not an artifact, by the way. And there will be a beam of light from the ceiling that will be casted down into the hole. And from reflection, the mirror in the hole, the light will be casted onto the front side of the mirror and then panned onto a white panel that is sitting in front of the bronze mirror. Now through these multiple steps of light refraction, you will normally see a blurb of light on the panel, but instead you see the elaborate design of the backside of the mirror. Now you're wondering, how is this possible, as the backside of the mirror is facing the audience and there is no light being touched with it whatsoever. So that shouldn't even be possible, that the backside of the mirror is showing through the light. Now, this has a very interesting explanation towards it, as during the Western Han period, during the creation of this mirror, specifically the polishing and the cooling down process of the mirror itself, the front side and the back side, developed something known as a variable elasticity, which also means that the front side and the back side somehow kind of merged together in a sense, except it was not able to be viewed by the human eye. It was on a microscopic scale. However, when provided with the necessary equipment, such as a beam of light and another mirror to shine that light, it will show the backside of the mirror, as I previously said. And no other mirror is able to be able to recreate this, as this mirror was created as an unforeseen accident, as this was supposed to just be a normal viewing mirrors for people to see the reflections on. This was completely unforeseen, and the creators of the mirror did not know how to replicate this, as this discovery that it had such elements to it was discovered later on when it was rediscovered. Thank you for providing me with this opportunity to present such an artifact, and thank you for your time. I would like to thank you for coming today.
So you may be wondering, after looking at all those artifacts, how are they made? Well, as you can see right here, they're made by using clay molds. So the first step to making clay molds is to have the correct material. These materials include loess, sand, plant fiber, plant ash, and grog. After mixing all these materials together, you get a clay-like substance which you can use to shape into whatever object you want. This object is now your mold. Now the second step is to create the patterns on the mold. Now to do this, you must split up the object into fourths or quarters. After doing that, you put the design on the inside of the mold and not on the outside. The third step would be to have an inner mold. The inner mold, or core, would be used to make the shape hollow, or your object hollow. The final step would be to combine everything together. This includes the mold, the outer core, and even the bronze. To combine the bronze, it is poured in and it already is at a melting point. And then afterwards, you put it in the mold and everything is baked and fired. After everything is baked and done, you break open the mold and out you have your brand new bronze artifact. Thank you for listening to me present about my object, and have a great time at the Bowers Museum.